What's up, everybody? It's Mac here. It's been a really long time since I posted on YouTube. Back in like 2007, 2008-ish, I was building my YouTube following with my beat making videos. I was making beats as I was recording myself, editing the videos, everything. I was back in Michigan at the time. A lot has happened since then, and right before 2011, I moved to Colorado. In 2014, I started TheLabStudioz, where we are right now. I have a lot of content coming out, and I felt like a good reignition to just me posting on YouTube would kind of be a walkthrough of my studio facility to kind of just give context and kind of show you where we will be and where all the equipment is, and just kind of like a brief history of just the studio, because in 2014 I started the lab in an office building, and I did retrofit the office to be a recording studio, but it wasn't until August of 2018 that I got this building, and I built the entire studio facility from scratch. So everything from the walls to the interior design to just the actual design of the studio facility, its functionality, the equipment that's in Studio A, everything I designed, and I executed the build with some friends in 2018 up until 2020. And yeah, it was a crazy experience. I wish I would have documented more of that when I was doing the build, because it was really interesting, and I was actually doing it how a studio should be built: double walls, the specific insulation, the wiring setup, just everything was very how a studio should be. But at the time, I was very focused on getting it done. I was in transition from one studio to here, so I needed to kind of move quick, and that wasn't really what I was thinking about. But really, we're here now, and this is a lot of still really good information, and a lot of cool stuff goes on here. There's a lot of gear. We work with all different types of musicians. I'm still making beats. I probably will get into some of that. This channel is also going to kind of double as not just music related, but some of my off-roading stuff, my mechanic stuff. I'm very into cars, like I always have been. So you'll see a lot of that. And also just kind of like life, I think. I think I've built this business up to a point where I've learned a lot and I have some knowledge to give. And maybe not everyone wants to hear it when it's in that situation, but putting this type of stuff out there I think is important. Yeah, basically what you're about to see is a walkthrough of the studio with some explanation and some stories here and there. It's about an hour long. I actually chopped it down a lot. There's a lot more stories that goes into all of this, because like I said, I built everything. So that whole process, there's a lot of stories, and maybe we'll get into that at some point. But yeah, there's just a few of those, and then just kind of explanation of everything that's going on here. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this is the first room when you walk into the studio from outside. It's basically just an entry room, but also kind of like a kitchen area. The little nook over there, just to have a spot to eat, set up food. This is kind of just a wall, some random art, and some memorabilia of mine, like a project I worked on with one of my artists at the time, but now he's an engineer here. Just some good quotes. This is another project I mixed and mastered for DJ Hoppa. Shout out DJ Hoppa. An old flyer from a long time ago, getting going. Before social media was really even a thing, this is what we did. We had these flyers, and we'd go to gas stations and barbershops, liquor stores, all that, and we put them out. And then this is a sketch. So when I got the building in August of 2018, I knew the dimensions of this space, and it was a completely empty space except for this room that we're standing in. And this is like a little sketch out of, like, I think this was the final rendition out of 12 maybe. And that's why I have it up here in a frame, because it ended up kind of being like this. I just named them different, and the way it's kind of laid out ended up working out a little bit different. And this is just an artwork from, he's done a lot of ink on me. Tattoos, Cody On. He's moved up a lot, and when I first started in 2014, he was working at the little tattoo shop down like right across the street from the studio. So that's how I know him. And he's done a lot of ink, but he's at the same time we've kind of came up together in our own ways, which is pretty cool. And then obviously we got this sign up here. This room has actually gone through a lot of different renditions. And at one point it was like a little office, and then it was like just an open room and unfinished. And then last year in 2024, I kind of came in here and I brightened it up, opened it up, made it look nice. And this was one of the first things that I did, minus like the paint and you know, everything else. The records were already here. But yeah, this just lets you know when you walk in where you're at. So the next room would be this little nook room right here. The bathroom is actually right next behind me. And I just have this entry sign with some slat acoustic wall to kind of make it quiet in this little area. Deaden the noise coming in from the street from that. Even though there's a garage back there, it does help. And this is just like another little entry room, chill away for the bathroom, take some pictures, whatever. I really, really love this sign. It's a lot more expensive than I thought it would be, but definitely worth it. And I did this cloud ceiling. My original plan actually was to do this in more places here, so I have a lot of the material to do that. But I started noticing more and more people do it, streamers, other studios, all of that. So I just decided to do just a little spot, just to have it because I always wanted to. And I will say that that's not fun to do. I mean, in between, it's like the stuffing from pillows and like couch cushions, but then you're using hot glue to put it on the ceiling. Everything else is easy, but that is kind of hard to do. But yeah, so we're here in the lounge, and this room, I really like this room. It's gone through a lot of different renditions as well, but this comes in right from that entry room that we just covered. And we have Studio A over here down the hallway, and Studio B is right here. And then my tech room is behind. But this wall, the floor, the ceiling, the whole vibe in here is just like very chill and let you know that you're in a curated space. You're not just in a little office building or whatever. There's some thought that has gone into it. There are some minor details that I need to tighten up in here, but again, I do all of this stuff, so I have to, you know, when I get time. But yeah, this signature wall graffiti has always been a huge thing for me. I've always been a huge fan of graffiti, never did it myself, but that's always been a thing for me, so I wanted to incorporate that into my brand, obviously. So this has been kind of a staple since I started the lab in 2014. Just having a wall with the graffiti logo and then let people sign who have come through, because I think that that is a cool little addition. It lets people know that they're in a spot that is trusted, and you know, a lot of people come through here. There's some big names up here. I don't know where they are anymore. Some of them I do, but some of them they've been written over or whatever. But there's pretty much a lot of the people in the city are from here, and then a lot of traveling musicians are up on this wall, and that's pretty cool to see. And then obviously we have this big screen right here. You could do a lot of stuff in here. There's a sound bar hooked up with a subwoofer. So really you could play music videos, check out mixes, connect Bluetooth, watch a movie, keep your kids occupied. Although I don't recommend bringing kids to the studio necessarily, especially since, you know, just there could be partying here, smoking and stuff. I don't think that's great for kids, but this is great to have that. There's no video game system or nothing, because I mean, this is kind of like an amenity. It's not really like a necessity, you know? I think that like having a video game system, having that in here is kind of just, it's bringing a vibe that I wasn't really looking for. And then right here where the camera is actually sitting is like a bar style table. And that's just good. It faces the TV. You can sit in here and eat. It's more seating. We actually do events in here where we set up, it's called producer chemistry. I did a few. I set up right here, PA system. The crowd or the people attending can sit and stand with the garage door open, food outside, and just playing beats, you know, or just other small events like that. And I have some plans for some other stuff in here, just content. It's really cool. I mean, the epoxy red floor, just the whole color scheme in here gives it that garage laboratory, but also creative. And yeah, it just makes you feel like you're in a curated space, like I said earlier. So obviously this room is kind of hard to cover. It's pretty small. Um, it didn't actually start out to be like this. It was just gonna be a closet for like cleaning stuff or whatever. But as I got more into the tech stuff, I needed an area to kind of work. It was getting a hassle to bring everything into the studio, make a mess, clean up, you know. So basically what I have here is just like my workbench, a little work light with a magnifying glass, a solder station for desoldering and soldering, all my associated stuff. I have different cables, capacitors, solder, connectors, tools. Yeah, I have a case down here with gear that I'm not using that may or may not need repair. Um, I have an extra computer down there, random cables and headphones, an extra little vacuum. The network situation is in here, cables that need repair or just spare cable, like wires, whatever. There's a lot of stuff. And then right here is some capacitors and little parts and pieces for different gear here. These are kind of common stuff that I've already replaced, and I feel like it's good to just have. And a lot of this stuff, it's like there's hundreds of these, and you buy them, it's like a couple cents each one, and then they tell you like when you buy a bunch, it's a little bit cheaper. So it's just easier to do that. A label maker for different things. I like to stay organized. Yeah, I got all the paperwork right here for the Neve. It's good to have this to kind of reference. There's some duplicates, like I have another binder right here with more info from the previous owners. There's this is for the flying faders for the Neve. I'm not using them right now, and I actually just sold like the brain unit for all of that. But this will be cool to have into play eventually for just power assist, so it makes the faders kind of glide nicer. And then I have some suede for the walls and the pads in there. I have all my channels up here. These are like the modified channels. Like what the board is, it was a modified VR Neve. So these are the modified channels that need just little bits and pieces or some repair. And then these were spare regular channels that are ready to just be stripped down. They have all their modules and everything. And then I have extra spare parts for the Neve in both of these. And I think also some like LED stuff, because I have a lot of LED lights around here, so stuff to do that. And everything else up here and above where the camera is all just like storage for stuff, really, as you can see. But this is technically like my tech room now, so I actually hang out in here sometimes, you know, kick it. I'll solder in here or just hang out in here and edit a video or something. I don't know, I like these like areas like this. I do love the studios obviously, but I like these areas where it's just kind of like my tools, and it's like a techie kind of, you know, mechanical area. That's because if I'm not in the studio, I'm definitely in the garage or I'm in here, you know. So it's a cool little room. I like it. I could fix anything in here, really. So this is Studio B. It's a pretty basic setup, but at the same time, it's very powerful. I specifically chose the gear set in here based off of the fact that the rate in here is kind of like you're getting a little bit bigger of a room to hang out in, a decent sized booth, but the gear set is kind of set. You don't get a choice of mic, you don't get a choice of preamp, all that. There's not as much flexibility as far as that goes. So when it comes to like live stuff, I mean, you can get guitar done in here, but when it comes to live full band and the choice and more of like a critiqued sound and the ability to switch it around, you have to go into the other studio. But in here, I've chosen that gear set very specifically. Over years of using different gear, working with many different types of artists, tones, vocal tones, all of that. And really, it's pretty simple. It comes from the mic, which I'll cover here in a second, into the API 512C preamp. That's not a typical vocal preamp, but it does sound great for the combination of microphone which is in there. And then from the preamp, it comes into the 1176 over here, the compressor. And that just gives us control coming into the computer so that the mixing side on post is like less. You don't have to worry about that as much because it's coming in so good and clean. And that is a specific choice because you can, the attack and release, you can adjust. And then the input into the compressor and the output, you can all adjust that, the ratio, everything. That's a great unit for something like this where it gives you some flexibility, but you're kind of locked into that tool set, which really helps the progress of sessions in here because you don't have to worry about all this other gear, you know? And then really, this is a same setup as before when I was in Lakewood, before I had this building. The two screens, same desk, the Apollo interface, and the computer. That was kind of the Atom monitors and the Yamahas. That was kind of my go-to for years, you know? So I just put it in here, added the third screen up top, which really does help since these screens are kind of small. You can pull some plugins up into there or have the Apollo software up into there. But yeah, that's cool. This is a really nice studio. I still work in this studio. I have certain artists that prefer this studio or this is just where they sound better. So yeah, there's tons of plugins in here. It has Pro Tools, Ableton, Fruity Loops might be on here. Yeah, it is. I see it. Fruity Loops is on there. So many plugins. This one might actually have a little bit more plugins than what's in there. Some of them are different, but I think Studio A has just a little bit less than what's in here. And then we got, you know, obviously you see the big booth right here. And a quick funny story about this. So when I moved from Lakewood, this was the size of the window at the studio in Lakewood. So I took out the glass because I'm like, all right, that'll be one extra cost that I don't have to do. And one of them, I think it's the one on the inside is a double paned from like a door, from like a really big door that had been taken out of the frame. And that's what the windows were. So I had two of those. And the one on the inside we got in there. And then an engineer at the time that was helping me build this studio, I was getting ready to put in this side of the glass. So I was cleaning another one on the inside. And I told him, hey, go grab that big pane of glass. It's right around the corner. Just be careful. And he's like, okay, cool. So he's coming, so he walks out and he goes, and the next thing I hear is like a crash noise, like obviously the glass broke, and I'm like, damn it. So I walk out there and he's standing, and it had like this metal frame around it that was holding the glass, like that was what you glued to the frame of the door originally. So he was just holding that and there was no glass, and he was just standing and there was glass shards all over him. I'm like, all right, just stand still, I'll get the glass off of you. But luckily, one of my artists at the time, his mom, he actually worked there too, a mill down the street. So I got a really good price on glass. So I got a nice, another piece for this side. But that's just a funny little story about like this, the building of this, was that like the glass situation. And yeah, and then it's just a little seating area, nothing crazy. I'm still trying to actually figure out like how I want the seating to be in here. I go back and forth with it being like this huge big couch and some tables, or like two separate couches and like a little nook table so you can kind of eat in here because this setup is a little bit bigger. But yeah, I'm still figuring it out. And then over here, what I want to kind of do is like more of the keyboard situation, kind of incorporate some of that into here, make it more of a production suite. And then eventually I'll put some type of desk right here. I did have one for a while, but people were standing on it and getting it really nasty. So I took it out and I redid the floor because it was starting to look a little grody. So I just kind of X'd that out of it. So we're here in the vocal booth, and unfortunately I kind of have to have it in that wide angle view so you can see in here and get the perspective. But yeah, it's pretty simple little booth. I mean, sounds great in here. There's plenty of room, as you can see. I got all the pads kind of localized over here. They were all over for for a period of time, but we've kind of like moved them to where we feel like they needed them. And it sounds great in here. I mean, this mic, the whole setup in here sounds great. I've tracked guitars in here, harmonica. I think I've actually done a cello in here. and then obviously a ton of vocals, singing, rapping, all of that. So great little room. It has its own AC system in here, heat AC, so you can kind of adjust a light that you can turn off yourself. Headphone amp right here, so you can hear, everything can move around. A little music stand and a desk right here with some charging ports if you need to like plug in your camera doing content or your phone. The mic power is down there, and also the selector for the pattern of the mic. And then right here, actually, so the mic that we have here is the Telefunken AR51, and they don't make this mic anymore. You can look up the history on it, and I'll probably do a video about this mic eventually. And I've modified this mic. I've opened it up and I've put different wires in that were kind of like thicker or different material, better material. Also some capacitors on the board in there I've changed, and then the tube was the biggest thing. And I've actually gone through a few different tubes in this mic, trying them out. The one that it comes with is a good, I think it's a GE tube, and it's pretty nice, but it leans kind of on the, I don't know how you would even put it. It just feels like it's missing some body. So then at one point I had a different new old stock Telefunken tube that fit in this, put in there, and I rocked that for a really long time. And I have a few other ones, but I think what's in there right now is kind of the most expensive, nicer tube. It's the Amperix tube. So saying that, actually, talking about this mic is making me remember that the API preamp in there, I've opened that up as well, and there's a chip in there called the op amp, the OP amp, and I've taken that out and put in a modified one made by a guy, I think he's here in the United States, but I could look that up, and if anyone's interested in that, and let you know what I did to that. But really what it did was it just kind of like brought more life and more transient response, and just kind of like grab, it brought that more to that preamp. So that's something that's kind of unique. And then mixed with this and the Amperix tube, it really is like a one-of-a-kind sound. Like, I don't think anyone would even be able to like recreate what I've done here, because it's kind of Frankensteined inside. I've taken off the Telefunken emblem on the outside. It still says it up here, but yeah, it's custom. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, this is a cool little booth. Got the little ambient lighting. I have plans to do something else with the ceiling in here and the lighting, but for now, this is great. We've been rocking this studio forever. It's one of the more busy vocal booths in here. So as we're walking here out of Studio B, we're back in the lounge. We come down this hallway right here. We're in Studio A. Okay, so obviously there's a lot to cover in here. It's not as simple as in the Studio B over there, but this is Studio A. And first and foremost, the elephant in the room, the console, is a vintage Neve VR36. So the short history of this board was Neve and SSL have been back to back for ages. And there's been some other companies here and there, but those were the two main big large format console manufacturers, right? So in that time, SSL came out with the 4000 console, which had dynamics on each channel, as well as the EQ and the preamp and all of its routing features and everything, right? So that was kind of like the new thing. Each channel had a compressor and a gate, and it had all this extra features, and so that was like next level, right? So Neve being like, oh, we got to catch up, this was their board that was directed towards being that competition for the 4000, because this console has up on each channel, it goes pre, compressor, routing, and then the EQ, and then you have a mini fader, so you can kind of like go back and forth. The way I use it is like my input to Pro Tools is I use the mini faders so that no one can bump them, and then what we're hearing, I'll use the faders down here as like my mix here, but I end up not changing those really because I like it to come in, you know. That's a different conversation, but yeah, there's a lot going on in here. That's the biggest thing. The next one is like this over here is actually the patch bay for the console. So everything that's routed into the studio goes through this patch bay. All the lines in all of the rooms on the wall for all the mics, they come into this patch bay. All of the returns, like if I send something into here and I want it to come back, it's all up into here. All the stuff behind me on the rack, it's all up. Everything is patched from here. And the next unit in here is actually the controller for the monitors, which is this guy right here. And that allows me to switch between the big speakers and the smaller ones. I can actually use that to talk back to the people in the booths, and they hear me in their headphones. And then also I can turn on and off the subwoofer, which is sitting down here below. And then up here, what we have is an Avalon. And the reason why it's sitting here is because this is a new thing, this console. Being in here last year, I installed it. About this time last year, I installed this, or I started to install it. And it's a whole process. So I haven't actually gotten most of this gear hooked up. Like I have all my lines going back to Pro Tools to the Apollos. Those are all hooked up. Everything for the keyboard, all of that stuff. But as far as my gear back here, I don't have that hooked up yet. So this is the main workhorse of what we're using right now for vocals. So it's called an Avalon, and it's pretty famous unit. I mean, it's got a preamp, a compressor, and an EQ all in one. And I've actually modified this one. I got this from a buddy, and the first thing I did was I replaced the tubes with brand new tubes to spec for this. And then I started having an issue with the power. It was giving like a buzz noise. So when I got into the power supply, I actually, talking to some people and watching some videos, I found out which is like the culprit usually for the problem that I was having. But I decided to just replace everything that was in there, all of the caps, with higher degree Celsius rating, so it allows them to get warmer. And I just did that kind of as a longevity thing, but that ends up kind of changing the sound a little bit. And yeah, it works great. And then back here is just a whole mess of cables, which I won't even get into it, but originally, the reason why it's like this is because originally this board was longer. This is what they consider a bucket, which is 12 channels. And it had one more bucket of 12 channels, which would have made it a 48. And then, or no, would have made it, yeah, 48. And then it had another bucket like this one that had like a producer's desk, and then all of this patch bay was in that bucket. So all of this cable is meant to go out like even further, you know what I mean? So there's like, it's all right there, and that's not the type of thing, like you would have to come here and see it. Like that's not the type of thing you like start cutting and splicing and like making shorter. There's so much cable, and it's so nicely done by Neve that like you just leave that. So I have this situation back there, but it's not a huge deal. It's just my OCD. Right here we have the PMC 6-2s. These are really nice speakers. They're like, I'm pretty sure they're three-way or they might be four-way, but they have a lot of built-in features. You can look them up. They're crazy. Um, the biggest difference I noticed between them is like this being a very, very high-end speaker, it opens up the mid-range a little bit more and everything gets a little bit more like detailed. Not in a sense of like sounding better, although they do sound good, but it allows you to hear that stuff that you wouldn't normally hear on something like this, which these are the Atom A77Xs. I've had those for a long time. I'm a big Atom audio fan. I think that like I'm just used to that sound, you know? And yeah, then obviously the big 55-inch TV. I was actually, when I picked up this console in Memphis, there was an older engineer in there, rented a studio, or I'm not exactly sure the situation, but he had this huge TV in front of him, and I was just thinking in my head, I'm like, wow, that's actually a really good idea considering like you're looking at this thing all day and you kind of need more space. So I don't know, it just makes it easier to kind of do that. And then over here is another obvious situation. So these are all my keyboards. They are all hooked up, so you don't need to do anything, and there's more of them. I take some of them home, whether it be to work on them or just I want to use them. Like right now, there's a big 88 key keyboard that I have at home that usually sits right there, which I will be bringing back soon because I was really using it to get some like electric piano sounds out of it to use at home. But yeah, and then up here we have the Korg Minilug XD synthesizer. It's small format, but man, it's got some punch and it's got some crazy synth sounds in it. It's really nice. And then this is the Moog Sub 37, and really this is kind of like a I don't think this is hooked in. Really, this is like a bass synth. Probably can't hear that, but it's bass. But you can use it as synth too, but it's a mono out, so that's kind of the reason it's like the sub. And this is the Axis TI2. I think they might even call it the Snow Edition. This is probably this. I think this is the first high-end synth I ever bought. This is an expensive synth. It's very powerful. It actually has. It can plug USB into your computer, and there's a VST to control it because it's so advanced. And like as you can see, you have what you have here, and it's this little like calculator screen. But at the time, this was like the craziest synth. It's like so many things you can do with it, and it has like big lush sounds. And again, you probably can't hear those, I don't know, but it sounds amazing. And I'll probably hold on to this forever because these will be really valuable one day. And it's funny, a lot of people will come in and they like see this one like, oh, that's why I want to use that, but they have no idea how to use it. And then they get through the menus and then they get lost. And then I'm getting phone calls like, hey, how do I get out of, it's just funny. And then this down here is another synth I really love. This is the David Smith Prophet Rev 2. And I'm pretty sure, I can't remember because I've had this a long time too, if this is the 8 or the 16 voice. But all that means is like how many keys you can play at once and how big the sounds, how lush they can get, really. Probably can't even hear that, but this is a really good synth, especially if you're into like that Travis Scott, um, heavy synth from, you know, just that sound. Like this is the synth for that. I've had people book just to use this synth and get a bunch of sounds. Then this one up here is, I think it's Behringer. It's the, oh, it's, yeah, well, is it Behringer? I forget, but it's the DeepMind 6. And I bought this for my brother-in-law. He makes electronic music. Well, he did. I think he still, I mean, he still can, but I don't think he like actively, he used to perform and everything. But he had this and he was messing around with it for a while, but he was kind of minimizing his setup and having kids and everything. So when I was building the studio, I was like, yeah, I'll buy it. You know what I mean? So sorry, I'm doing this. It's like, these are all dusty. It's so hard to keep up with cleaning all this fucking gear. But, and some of them are like, I don't know, they just get abused. And then, oh yeah, and then down here is the Machine Mark III. This is Mark III, I think. And I use that. when I'm here, especially if I'm using Ableton to produce, because or actually, I guess yeah, that's what I used when I produce here is Ableton. Yeah, then over here is just a screen for a security camera, some miscellaneous cables, and then this is all associated to the console. So that's the big expensive power conditioner up there for these two pieces. And the blue unit is a aftermarket power supply for the console. So the normal ones, the original one is probably the size of like this vent all the way down to the bottom. Like that's how big it is, and it's really loud. And I actually did recap it to kind of get a good reading of where I was at for power so I could calibrate this one. But I got this one from a company over in England, and it basically saves a ton of power. There's essentially not really any heat. I mean, obviously electricity is going through it. It does give off some heat, but really quiet. You can't even hear it right now. And down here is the power supply for the meter bridge, because up here, all these meters, they glow, they move up and down orange, and they have their own separate power supply for them. So that's what we got going on there. These are some timbali drums and a cowbell. Some reggae vibes. And in here, what this is an isolation booth. What I mean by that is like, this could be a vocal booth, it could be a guitar booth. And then in here, what I have is my little mic rack. I do keep it slim, although there is a lot of stuff up in here. I'll do a gear rundown eventually, but I have the essentials and some nice stuff. And then up here, we just have some miscellaneous like microphone clips, shock mount, some different pedals, guitar pedals, that's a tuner. Yeah, pop filter, screwdriver, drumsticks, all of that. And I'll cover that thing eventually. Yeah, and then next obvious is the big piano. I just got this, and I actually need to get it retuned. It's okay, but it's not like perfect. I just got it. I got it for free. And also the pedals, the arms that make them actuate, they need to be put in, because the guy who is refurbishing it is who I got it from, and he wasn't completely done, but they wanted to get it here, so it's here. And I'll do another video where I'm like miking that up and everything. It'll be cool. And then we got my drum set, which, man, this is a Frankenstein of a drum set. And I've kind of pieced it together over time. I'm not even a drummer, but I kind of know what I want as far as like the sound of the drums. And I kind of know like what the drummer's like, you know what I mean? Within reason, because some drummers, if they're really serious, they bring their own stuff. I'll do a rundown on this, but it's a nice drum set. It started out as something simple and kind of worked its way up, and Frankenstein, like I said, you know? And then don't mind the couch. That's just here because the piano is in here and I'm still trying to figure out what to do with it. I don't want to I have nowhere else to put it. Okay, so then on this side, obviously we have the big window. So I can stand up. The TV is blocking a lot of it now, but it's worth it. But yeah, I stand up and I watch them play. It's pretty surreal to see that happening and be hearing it or whatever. And it's in like a studio setting. But yeah, I have this whole little situation down here. These are all the inputs there for the live room. There's some returns. There's a bunch of mic inputs. There's also Ethernet and HDMI. So if the band wants to, I can turn on this TV up above and they can see Pro Tools, or maybe they need like lyrics, or we're doing a voiceover for a movie or something like that, cutting music for a movie, and they want to see it, or just like video type stuff. You can see it up there near the screen, do whatever. And then obviously all my cables down here, they should be kind of like in order. So you got like Ethernet cables for the headphone system, shorter cables for shorter runs, then they progressively get bigger to where we get to the last one, where it's like specialty cables, guitar cables, all stuff like that. And then I keep this snake, which is basically just an extension to a box for the for a lot of the inputs that go to the console, because because that makes it easier to not have this cable crazy runs, because usually the drum set takes most of the cables, right? And then each of the booths have them for the guitars. So I like to kind of bring it out here, and then I have one big thick cable, and I can keep everything tight onto the kit so it looks cleaner in here and people aren't stepping all over crazy cables or whatever. So the way I set it up in here too, if anyone noticed, like absorption is on this wall, and this wall. And then diffusion is on the two big main walls. And then I also have absorption on the ceiling. And then coming up to the ceiling, the soffit has softer beetle kill wood that is more of like diffusion and absorption in a way. So coming up to that, it loses energy, and then it hits the Owens Corning 703 absorption up there. And then I have different materials in these pads. Some of it's very squishy, some of it's harder, some of it's very firm. But it's kind of just grabbing all the frequencies. And then these diffusers over here, it allows this room to sound very big. I mean, it is a big room, as you can tell. Like a full band fits in here very snug, but they have their own little area to kind of like move around, each one of them, especially when we set everyone up right. But yeah, and then this room kind of goes through different phases. Like sometimes I'll have everything in here, sometimes I'll pull stuff out and it'll be really open. It just kind of depends on what we're doing in here, but the sound is very big in here, and I love the sound in here. Gotten used to it. Yeah, and then we have the isolation booths on either side of the live room. So really this booth over here is kind of just for like a guitar amp. When I have the whole band in here, everyone stands in here, but then the drum set is being recorded, so you don't want bleed from the guitar amps. So I put those in either booth and then shut the doors and mic them up separately. So that's usually what lives in there, is a guitar amp. And then in here, same thing. We'll eventually move the vocalist into here, and they'll be solo, just like rap, hip hop, R&B. But I use that as a guitar room as well. And that one actually has a window that looks into the booth, and we'll walk in there. So this room is obviously a little bit tricky to video, but as you can see, it's very quiet in here. I don't know if you're telling that on the mic that I'm wearing, but it's very quiet in here. It got really dead. The ceiling is very, very squishy, double layered insulation, and it's suede covered. And then on the sides, I have a little bit firmer insulation, and together they really deaden down the sound. And then also this room isn't like a perfect square. The wall right here is at an angle. So if things want to start bouncing around, they eventually lose energy somewhere. And then obviously there's a window right here to look in. I can see the whole studio actually. And right here is a little headphone preamp. Real basic little booth. The vintage U67 mic. I'll do a video on this, but this is the primary vocal booth. And this door right here goes back out. You walk out this and walk right back into the control room. But yeah, this is a cool booth. As you see, it has the little lighting along the lip of the room. Kind of gives the illusion that the whole ceiling is like kind of floating there. It's the same in all of the studios. So, but this one I have it, and then with the lights off, as you can see, it's pretty cool. Sets a vibe in here. A lot of people actually dim the lights, because if you have it like really dim, I'm not sure how this is looking on the camera, but if you have it really dim like this, you can see perfectly in here because there's two lights, so you can see good. And if you have your paper, you can see good. But then in there, it starts to get really, actually, you can't see as well. We start to see a glare. And I actually recommend that, because sometimes you can feel like you're in a fishbowl or whatever. So yeah, just some random other facts about this studio. It took 1.5 years to build from start to finish. All double walled. Special acoustic insulation on the inside. There's a rock wall right here for diffusion. All the ceilings are padded and suede. The walls are suede. This keyboard rack, I custom made this. The little stands for it, obviously I didn't like fabricate the metal, but I put that all together. Everything I did, all the wiring, cut in the concrete to make a little tunnel for the cable to get from the console over here. Behind the console, there's a situation on the wall, a kind of thought out situation for extra padding so that sound coming off of the gear wall coming back doesn't bounce back and create a weird frequency. And then also there's just, I mean, the way I set up the wiring, it's like I know that the booth over here, that wiring comes to this gang of plugs, and the same for over here. And then there's just a really big thick cable that comes out from the live room, and that comes into just the patch bay. And then there's all the power is separated back there for different things, different breakers, all of that. It was really thought out. This room, that's why this room took so long to build, because even doing all of that, I've realized now after having this room, was it been 7 years? Or yeah, like 6 or 7 years. There's other things that I wish I would have done. I just didn't have the knowledge at the time, you know? Um, but yeah, I mean, we still make it work, and a lot of the stuff that I'm thinking of, I can retrofit, which I am doing, like one of them being Ethernet, hardwired Ethernet. I should have done that everywhere. You can do so much with Ethernet, but I didn't do that, but I'm about to. And other than that, I mean, it's just really, you know, a lot of thought went into this room. That's something that I don't know if people actually like. I designed all of this, you know, and all the stained wood. I did all of that. I didn't buy that pre-done. If you look at some of it has clear coat and some of it doesn't. I was just getting to this point at the end of the build where I'm like, is anyone gonna actually notice that? And I really wanted to get it together. And those little things, I didn't want to kind of like launch without finishing some of that little stuff, because there are other little things here that I haven't finished, but you know what I'm saying. There's certain things, but yeah, this room came together really well. I think that it sounds really good in here. There is some acoustic, not really issues, but just stuff to kind of keep in mind now with the bigger speakers that I put in here. Um, yeah, I need to kind of do some more. It's really just the bass. Having some bass build up in here if I try to get it too loud. So, and then it starts to kind of lose its accuracy. So. I'll get into that. I'll do some videos of me making some diaphragmatic bass traps. I know that's a mouthful, but there's different types of acoustic treatment, and we'll get into that too. But yeah, this is the cream of the crop in here, man. I mean, a lot of studios have like so much gear, and although that is cool, like I've had a bunch of gear, but then like I'm constantly buying, selling, trading, moving to different things. And then I'm also, since I own the studio, it's like I need to kind of make decisions about like, is this gear good for everyone? Is this good for every genre? That type of stuff. So, um, I tend to kind of keep it slim, you know. This is a big situation right here. This is, if you were to think about this, yes, it's a big console and it has some other features, but it is 36 channels of compressor, EQ, and preamp. So I have right there 36 compressors, 36 EQs, and 36 preamps off the bat. So like you put that into down here, it's that gets out of control. And I like to kind of keep a signature sound, you know what I mean? I don't like it to, I like to be able to step away from it, but it all needs to kind of be cohesive. So that is kind of the thought process of having a big board like this for me is instead of getting a bunch of different units or just a bunch of the same different like preamp units that sit back here and it doesn't really look as cool, have this big board because I do have the room. The room was designed for a big console. And then back here, I do still have some other flavor. Like there's a Focusrite UAD 710-4. So there's like 8 pre's right there. Got a bus compressor, a DBX 160A compressor, 4 different other compressors, the 3 Apollos, some all this is for the keyboards. But yeah, I mean that's there's a lot of stuff there. And then the Avalon's over there. And then just different mic choices with everything I have. I feel like it's a good setup, you know? And eventually, I mean, I continuously am getting stuff over time. This is a great studio, man. It's a great room. I think it excels really well at like the punk rock, um, or just punk, and then the pop punk kind of bands and the metal. It does great on rock too. That was kind of the mods that were done to this board by John Musgrave, who's a good friend now. Um, that was kind of the whole idea, was to bring this closer to the SSL 4000, a little bit more aggressive, punchy, but keeping that warmth from the Neve. So it excels at music now. Yeah, guys, thank you for watching. That was it. I really appreciate the support. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all that. You know the drill. I got a lot more content coming. I'm going to cover a lot of stuff like I mentioned before. But yeah, I thought this was a good first video, and I really appreciate the support again. So till next time.
This ain't the loving that